Hello and welcome to another edition of the C Squared Podcast. This is your host Curtis with my co-host Aaliyah, and we are here today with Archie Caine, who recently released a single a few weeks ago, and we're going to be talking to him about that. We're going to be talking about a bunch of other things. Basically, we are going to be digging up the dirt and putting him under the microscope, the radar, that type of thing. Just kidding, Archie. So first of all, Archie, thank you for being on. We really, really appreciate it. And
thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. So first question is over to Aaliyah.
So Archie, can you give us a brief nutshell version, just introducing who you are and what you do in the realms of metal?
So it all kind of happened because there's only one thing I could be said to be remotely good at, which is singing pretty much. And not in like a tooting my own horn kind of way, but I have very little other discernible kind of productive skill. So that's pretty much where that came from. And there wasn't really a time in my life when I wasn't singing. I started very young in kind of singing lessons and school choirs and so on. And it just worked for me in a way that nothing else was. So fast forward to now, and I somehow have an album coming out with two of my favourite singers ever, Damien Wilson and Diana Vergiersbergen. And yeah, it's all just kind of happened.
So cool. Is this your first time like doing music?
It's my first release, yeah.
Wow. Curtis, you want to take the next?
I do, but I have a quick question. Well, no, we'll get into it later. Never mind. So let's find out first. How did you get into metal?
Nightwish. I tell you, it was back in the MySpace days, you know, and obviously everyone could have like videos or music videos, whatever, on their page. And I scrolled past one, and it had "While Your Lips Are Still Red," the one which Marco is the lead in, and I just thought, this is really cool. I'm going to look them up. By which, of course, back in those days, it was going down to the local HMV and HMV and trying to find a Nightwish CD, and it was their Highest Hopes, I think, best of album, so from the Taya era, and I was just hooked, and so just started to explore more of this kind of type of music, because I was initially listening to the Taya era, but they were in the Annette era kind of at that point as well, so I had these two different versions of this band, and I think it fit really well because I was already really into like musical theatre and classical singing, and the kind of emotiveness and vocal stylings of both of those things fit really well with like symphonic metal and power metal, so it was almost a natural progression in a way.
Cool. So how did you so maybe how do I phrase this? Sorry. I've had a long morning, like Aaliyah had said, so bear with me here. So Nightwish, but how did you also get into the other symphonic metal band, which I assume you're also into? Because, I mean, everybody starts with Nightwish, it seems like. So kind of like, how did you kind of evolve beyond Nightwish?
It's pretty much a case of just coming across things. Like I find it really hard to, like, films or books or music, to fully engage with something that's completely new to me. I've got the attention span of a gnat, so it's pretty much a case of if something kind of passes my ears on a screen or whatever, and I like it already enough to then be invested in what that track is, and then so I think the next one for me was the next big thing that got me was oh god, what's it called? I'm completely blanking on the band's name, which is insane because they're massive. They had Roy Khan and now have Tommy Karavik.
Camelot.
Thank you. I've had a long day. I took a nap earlier and I still haven't fully woken up since. And it was that performance of The Haunting with Roy and Simone from Epica, and I just thought, you know, this is my shit. Like, this is really cool.
Oh, that song is so iconic.
Isn't it, right? And so yeah, it's just kind of gradually widening experiences each time of the kind of circles that these bands move in, pretty much. And yeah.
Cool. Okay, I got something, but it's for later, so I'll let Aaliyah do the next one. Okay.
Can you delve a little bit deeper in your history as a musician, and just singing, like how you got into it and your development as a musician?
Yeah, so I was I was like a theatre school kid, not like a big kind of professional training school, just a kind of Saturday mornings when you're a child. You go off 1 hour singing, 1 hour dancing, 1 hour acting. Um, and I was really fortunate in that my first ever singing teacher, back when I was about 6, was a retired opera singer. So I had really good habits kind of beaten into me almost at a very young age vocally. And it wasn't something I paid much attention to at the time, but looking back, I can see that it was definitely I mean, not necessarily a skill, but I was predisposed to do it well. Um, and ironically, the first time that I realised I was doing it well and really liked doing it well, it was actually we did High School Musical with this stage school, and I was Troy Bolton, so I got to sing the lead, which seems hilariously unlikely looking back now. Um, but I noticed that I was having a kind of a lot of vibrato, a lot of a really rich kind of belty sound um, that I wasn't hadn't been kind of consciously aiming for because I didn't really have words for those concepts, but the kind of general habits that I'd had instilled in me just from whenever I'd started singing lessons were kind of naturally resolving, and I guess combining with the fact that there was luck of birth in terms of what the inside of my throat was shaped like. So it all just kind of came from that, and then I went to. I dropped out of school before doing the last the A levels we would have here, and I actually went and did a diploma at a music college. Started a degree but dropped out of that, and now I'm actually back at uni again, music school. But of course I'm 30, so I feel rather like Gandalf among the hobbits. But it's really cool to continually go back to like vocal training and education and continually revisit things that I've done before because there's always either a new aspect that you haven't fully appreciated before, or also I believe you have a different voice every day almost because it's such a physiological thing that it's so inbound with your kind of emotional state, your physical activity, etc. So I am a different singer than I was yesterday, than I was 10 years ago when I first did a diploma, than I was however many years ago when I first had singing lessons. So it's something you never stop learning about, I think, which is, when it's the one thing you're good at, is really cool for me.
Yeah, for sure. I think there's never a time where you know everything. The
Mhm.
more you know, the more you realize how much there is to learn. I always
Yeah.
fumble over that saying.
Yeah, the more I know, the less I know about it, definitely. 'Cause
Right.
the more I learn, there's things I don't know anything about.
So I want to kind of, I know your next question talks about the story of the album, Aaliyah, but I kind of want to like ask about the story of this single, if that's okay, because
Yeah,
Sure.
sure.
like, can you kind of tell us about the single a little bit, because that's what's out right now. So I'm just curious about that first before we talk about the album.
Yeah, sure. So and obviously it falls within the kind of album as a whole, but if which is all very much kind of story based, but the point at which the single happens is just after a big kind of, well, basically the character dies. So and then he finds himself somewhere completely elsewhere, um, away from a really quite miserable world he'd lived in as a living person, because that's what people do when they live places. And he finds himself in this kind of magical other land, presided over by this angelic type figure, which is sung by Diana. And so it's really a song for me, I think, of like hope after despair when you didn't expect to find any, like a kind of triumph, the audacity of hope. And it really sticks in my head.
Cool. I'm just trying to think if there's anything else I want to go over with that. So no, I think that's fine. I'll let Aaliyah ask about the rest of it.
So what can people expect musically from this album? Do you think that the single is a good representation of the entirety? Is there more to it than that?
Yes to both. So it's weird. I'm because the song was written. Well, the songs were written by me and then my oldest and dearest friend Bo Wild and their wife Holly Nicol. And out of the three of us, I am the least. I have the least musicianship. Like I'm a singer and I know my way around kind of music, but actually, lots of the nuts and bolts of it are not provided by me because I don't know nearly as much about it. So I couldn't identify, say, a suspended chord if it hit me in the head. But lots, Eden is definitely, I think, one of my two favourite songs from the album because it's quite anthemic. There are symphonic elements throughout the album. Some ballads because, as I say, I grew up on Evanescence and Nightwish, so there were going to be some ballads if it killed me. But yeah, it's very much a concept album, so there are themes which kind of develop and are present through it. But yeah, it was all based on a short story, so we kind of broke that down into what are the parts of this that are individual songs, and then what is the tone of those like? What's the feel? What kind of instrumentation? Bo and Holly are keys players, particularly. So lots of the album is quite synth-led, where you would otherwise have kind of electric guitar-led songs, which I really like. But we seem between us to have kind of not picked up, developed a kind of symphonic pop rock type of feel, which I instantly recognise as ours because I've been making music with Bo particularly for, God, what year is it now? For like 12 years. So we know each other's styles really well. But yeah, I think it's its own thing. Really, it's hard for me. I forget. People ask you to explain your work, and suddenly I just completely blue screen. Like,
I understand. It's complicated to explain it. I mean, that's why it's music and not words. But
yeah,
people
because
like
it
to
makes
say,
such
like,
inherent sense, like in my head, but then having to actually take it out of that
right, and
is
articulate it is,
yeah.
yeah, I understand. What was the recording process like?
That was really cool because it was all really international and virtual. So it really started in a big way. If I backtrack a bit to the composition, over the first lockdown we had here, and so the composition of it even was Bo and I having lots of Zoom meetings or calls over Messenger or whatever, and sharing a Google Drive with Logic projects and lyrics and everything in. So that then kind of developed further when all the instruments were tracked in Paraguay, pretty much. So Bo and I had put together, I say Bo and I, mainly Bo and Holly, and then a bit me as well, had put together like MIDI demos orchestrated for all the tracks. They then got converted from Logic into Pro Tools and sent off to Adrian Benegas in Paraguay, who, along with his colleague Diego, either put everything through better VSTs than I have or retracked the instruments and then sent it all back. I did my vocal recordings here. Damien did his vocal recordings elsewhere in a studio in a different town that started with a W and now I can't remember it. And Deanna recorded her vocal parts at Sandlane Recording Facilities in the Netherlands, overseen by Joost van den Broek. And then Joost also did the mixing, and then Joost Driessen at Sandlane mastered it. So it spent the whole time kind of bouncing from one country to another country. So thank God for the internet, really.
Yeah, it's the epitome of what everybody's been forced to do due to COVID, but sometimes it also makes the world a lot smaller.
Yeah, it's made things really easy for me in terms of, because there was only one occasion I had to actually leave my house to work on this, which is to do my own vocal recordings. In fact, the singers are the only people who didn't have to do their parts in their own houses or their own studios because
the room space matters so much more in the microphone.
Yeah. Whereas lots of the Adrian has a studio that he works in already to do lots of his own music, and he collaborates with other people as well. Like I initially heard of him from my friend Pete Rawcliffe, who's an incredible symphonic metal countertenor, and his last single Adrian composed with him, so I kind of knew of him through that. But yeah, Bo and Holly have their own home studio as Adrian, so the singers are the only ones who had to go out where someone had a full voice recording set up, because it's not always convenient to have that in your house. Like I'm sitting on my bed at the moment because it was the clearest place and the dogs won't jump on me here. So
Nice. So I want there was a question that we didn't have on the thing, but I want to talk about the art for a second because
yeah.
I found it louder. I'm assuming this is the final art. What the fuck is up with the art and what is it? That is
wait, hang on. This art.
I can't see it, but it's got like a creep. Yeah, it's got that's it. That's it. So what's going on there?
So the art. So obviously the main kind of protagonist of this album is a boy called Tommy. That's what it's called, Tommy and the Angels. And so when I got in contact with Sam Hales, who did the artwork, we basically I sent over some MIDI demos of songs for the general vibe, discussed a bit kind of the story of what was happening, and then pretty much just left it like at that. No particular kind of design brief, just this is the feel of it, this is what it sounds like, and he kind of produced this. There's a point in the story of the album towards the end where the kid is like waiting in a graveyard, and so I think that was definitely the inspiration for this because there's a kid with a lantern in a graveyard. And then the big scary thing, I always think of it as a Dementor, like in Harry Potter, but it could be, it could be lots of things. It could be I don't want to give too much away of the story of the album, but like there's things in it that to the character are scary that it could represent, and there's also things which actually are kind of nice happily ever after type things, but when first encountered look scary. And so I think it's just, if I had to look at it and make just one instant thing, it's, he's alone in his circle of light that he's got for the candle, and everything outside it is dark and terrifying because he's a small boy and the world is uncertain. Like, fuck, I'm 30 and that sounds like most of my interactions with the real world anyway. So, 12-year-old Tommy, yeah.
So you wrote the lyrics, correct?
Bo and I wrote the lyrics together. Some songs the lyrics were just me. Some songs the lyrics were just Bo. The general big picture is that it was all of us kind of together with varying levels depending on the track.
That's what I was going to ask you about, was just the big picture, like in terms of the concept. Like that was your idea on the concept, or was it
concept? Yeah, concept was me, and it's quite stereotypical, but it came to me in a dream. Specifically, the melody of the epilogue came to me in a dream, and I was walking around for ages humming it, and the rest of the album grew backwards from that. Well, I wrote a short story because there were things like happening with that tune that I dreamed, and so I wrote a short story to try and account for kind of all of this, and then I thought maybe I should make something more musical out of this. So that's when I sent it over to Bo and said, would you consider getting involved in this with me? Laid it all out, and then ta-da.
Fair. So okay, I'm not a songwriter or anything like that. I'm not a musician or anything like that. So forgive me if this is a stupid question. I'm just prefacing this right now. So what kind of comes first, the music or the story in a concept album? Because I honestly don't know. Like, I guess it's a concept. So you come up with the like, what do you do?
I can't speak for concept albums as a whole. For this one, for mine, it was in practical kind of linear time concerns, the concept came first because it existed before the music did. If I were to approach it kind of straight off the bat without a kind of narrative idea in mind, then I don't know. I've always been, in my own tastes, I've always been a slightly more melody than lyrics inclined person, like as a listener of music. So maybe that would be, but I don't really know because that's not how this has happened. And actually, after this, there's an EP coming out which is both covers and originals, and then after that, there is another concept album which is already in production, and that too started with a narrative basis to it, which then sent over to Bo and said, "Let me know what you think about the kind of song divisions of this would be, and then we'll work on that." So. Yeah, but it's ironic, really, because I never liked short stories. and I could never quite see eye to eye with concept albums either, and now I can't seem to stop writing either of the fucking things.
That's hilarious.
That's
Now,
great.
I got one more follow up on this, Aaliyah, and then I'll let you. I swear to God, you can ask the next question. I swear. So just you said something that I just want to kind of latch onto there. You said you hate short stories, but you're kind of like doing them yourself. You hate concept albums, you're doing them yourself. So how do you how does that work?
So I mean I wouldn't go as far as say I've hated them, but they've never been quite for me. I never quite. I had no issue with concept albums existed, but I was never particularly drawn to it. And then short stories, I've never particularly liked because, like, you know, I love reading and I like something that I can be drawn into. And for me, a short story was its shortness was what made it not really for me.
Fair.
But yeah, you know, when the idea for this first album came to me, the logical for me way of kind of laying out what the narrative arc of it, what was happening, and initially getting these ideas like out of my head into something more tangible was to write a short story. I don't have the patience or the I think writing skill to have made a longer story out of it, so like a novel. So it was always definitely going to be a short story. And then yeah, the second full length album is. That came from a. I want to try and give the general answer without giving anything away of it because that's quite in the future, sort of next yearish. But there was a specific sequence of 4 images.
Yep.
That were almost like kind of a mise en scène in each one that seemed to indicate a. And again, this is something that came from a dream. Which is so crappy and stereotypical, but genuinely. So I've kind of actually sketched these out and described them and then said to a writer friend of mine, you know, you'd oblige me very much if you would make a short story out of this. And I just, you know, thought I'd see what he comes up with. And, you know, if it worked out that it could then have an album based on it that was true to kind of the spirit of how I felt about these particular images, then great. And if it didn't, then no harm done. And I just had this little short story. But yeah, that seems to have worked out well. So that's now with again with Bo and Holly, and we're already planning out the songs and the orchestration for that as well.
Interesting. Okay, over to you, Aaliyah.
Well, what an exciting time! Like you're just coming onto the scene and kicking ass and taking names, man. I'm excited to hear whatever's next. I did want to ask you how you started working with Diana and what it's been like working with her.
I mean, they say you should never meet your heroes, and I am here to tell you it's categorically untrue because Diana is. You know, we'll get on to the fact she's incredibly talented in a moment, but she is, from the very start of this, so engaged and gracious and cool to be involved with on this project. It's been really, really nice. I initially knew of her and Damien actually from the same performance of from an Aerion concert, the Electric Castle Live and Other Stories, and in Songs of the Ocean. She came out with Marcella Bovio, who I already knew who she was, so I wanted to find out who's this other woman who's also got a great voice singing with Marcella. Because, like I said in the other interview, actually, you know, I can sniff a dramatic soprano a mile off. That's really my jam. So then I looked more into her and what she'd done and found performance footage of her singing live, and I just thought this is fucking wicked. Like I love this. And her involvement came time-wise slightly after Damien's did, because I'd initially written the narration and everything of this album and thought it would be really cool if I could get Damien Wilson, who I also know from that performance because he came out singing the chorus, and I just thought this is the kind of singer that I want to be when I grow up. Like, so eventually got in touch with him, sent him some of the music, discussed all the other kind of arrangements that go with it, and he was up for it, so that's great. And then I kind of thought, oh, that was cool. Imagine doing the same thing with like someone like Diana. Wouldn't that be amazing? And I had this kind of thought for ages, and it occurred to me that there was no reason, eventually occurred to me after an embarrassingly long period of time, that there was no reason that I shouldn't actually just see if I could. And it's the same kind of process. Wrote to her, sent her some music. She gave it a couple of spins over the weekend, and said yes, she was up for it. So that was really cool. it's hard not to fanboy at times a bit because like they're incredible singers. But yeah, just been really, really cool to work with. Deanna's been really, yeah, gracious. Is probably the best. So she's been so engaged and everything with the project as well, which is really, really gratifying.
Out of curiosity, who's someone that you would like to work with in the future?
Floor Jansen.
Cool.
Or Arjen Lucassen.
That was right off the bat. You didn't even have to think about that. That was like,
yep.
Boom.
Yeah.
Cool. And why Floor?
She's an incredible vocalist. And she's got that particular like belty sound as well, which obviously coming initially from contemporary musical theatre, I value quite a lot. But yeah, I love. This is where we get to the politics of Nightwish singers, but like I love Nightwish, the music of Nightwish anyway. Tour Mrs. a Genius, and each of the three kind of vocalist eras of Nightwish have had something completely unique that they've contributed to it. But for me, Floor can do all of it. In like all eras of it, and the ones that have been originated kind of with her, and then anything else as well that she does. Her voice is incredible. Like Deanna, like Damien, she's the kind of singer that I'd love to be.
Interesting. Aaliyah, what's your take on this? Just out of curiosity, because Aaliyah is also a huge Nightwish fan. I just want to hear if this is the same for her. The Floor.
What my take on Floor? Yeah, that's the thing about Floor that makes her so amazing, is that she can do everything and do everything excellently. So he is kind of the epitome of artistic and technicality as a vocalist.
Interesting.
And it's important to me, especially as this is on the record as well, to clarify that that's not to denigrate the other Nightwish singers either. Like obviously Tarja's voice informed, to my understanding, what Nightwish ended up being, and that's huge. And I think symphonic metal would have existed without the Tarja era Nightwish, but it would have been different. And I think that can't be understated. And then Annette's completely different tone enabled them to go in a completely different direction that again they wouldn't have otherwise and have built on. And also in the studio, in that she was magic. Like Dark Passion Play and Imaginarium are incredibly complete albums. It's just for me, Floor is I think the first metal singer out of the three of them, and so it ends up adding up really well, and the algebra happens to be really satisfying, but the others are great too.
Cool. Aaliyah, am I allowed to ask more Nightwish questions, or do you want to get it back on track?
One more Nightwish question.
Okay, rank the Nightwish albums in order for yourself.
Fuck.
You can answer first the best to first.
Pick up the rest of the podcast.
Okay.
Do this.
The best whole album, I think, Dark Passion Play. Because it is, obviously there are songs on other albums which I really, really love, possibly more than I like some of the songs on Dark Passion Play, but as a complete work, Dark Passion Play I just think is so cohesive and whole.
Let's do top three, not the entire best of work. I just realized they got a lot of albums. So
That's a good idea, Kurt.
Yeah.
Top three. So Dark Passion Play. Nail biter.
Dark Passion Play, Imaginarium, and then it's a toss-up between, and this is cheating, between their best of album.
What?
Or you didn't specify.
You can't do a best. You can't do a best. That's the rules. I'm sorry.
And then either Once or Human Nature, or as I like to think of it with that font, Havman Natavra. Because some of the songs on Once are and will always be iconic and defined what the band would be, to an extent what the genre would be. And then Human Nature, I'm not primarily a composer, but it is, I think a lot of it is a masterwork of composition, but also The Greatest Show on Earth is just an incredible track.
Sure.
And yeah.
Cool.
I have when they do that live, and they have the "We Were Here" that comes on the back of the screen, the back of the stage. I have, excuse the nipples, I have that tattooed on my chest.
That's hilarious.
I love that. So yeah.
So Aaliyah, what's your top three just before, and then you can get us back on track here.
Oh God. I have to say Once is my favorite, followed closely by Dark Passion Play. For my third, gosh,
It's hard, isn't it?
really hard. Yeah, they have so many great albums, and I would say I have like a top five, and then the others I'm kind of like not sure. But let's see, if I have to pick one more.
One more.
I don't feel like either of the albums with Floor fall into my top three albums. Like I love the songs on them, but I think I'm gonna have to go with either, let me see really quick. I think I have to go with either Imaginarum or Century Child.
Interesting. So
that's a good choice too.
you guys both
Century
picked
Child is so good.
in your top three, which I think is kind of interesting because everybody always goes off about how she's not the best Nightwish person, but the two Nightwish fans that I know right now are both picking her albums as being in the top three. That's interesting.
Yeah, you got a rough rap from lots of like fans are brutal on female vocalists anyway, and which is another thing I could talk about all day because I'm not impressed. But because what it was something different, and when a band gets big and is loved, there is among a subsection of their fans a sense of entitlement to what that band does. So if they want to change direction or have dramatically change artistic and performance direction, like Nightwish did with Annette. I mean, she had stones thrown at her in the street, for fuck's sake. Like this, I think it went beyond not liking the music for people, and they were no longer getting what they had come to feel entitled to. And this isn't everyone, but it was, empty vessels make the loudest noises, and these people were and are happy to be noisy about it. And then obviously that's completely different to people who just found it wasn't to their taste. Like that's fair enough, But I think because of how noisy that chunk of people were and are, it really got combined with those two as well. And there are still people in fan groups on Facebook today who will complain about it and it taking over from Talia, despite the fact that neither of those people are with Nightwish now. They're both doing other things really well, and it's the height of disrespect, I think, to both of them, because like they can be accomplished performers without being in this band that someone likes.
I agree. So we got about 5 or 10 minutes left. I don't have much time on Aaliyah's. We don't have a lot of time left. So Aaliyah, if you want to take over the remaining key points.
Yeah, well, we can talk a little bit about how you've approached the promotion for the album and the single, because it's been incredible to see your growth, and we just want to know what your secret is.
To be honest, I haven't done any. It's luck.
Wait. How did you get into Louder with Dumb Luck? That doesn't make any sense. Like Louder is like the biggest publication in the UK for metal.
So I sent them a press release.
Yeah, did you do all your press releases yourself?
Yeah. So I said the press release, like I made, it was a fairly comprehensive press release. Like if I say so myself, like it had links to Google Drives with pictures, tracks in, full and short bios, put some handy quotes in the press release in case people want to use that. Don't want to like get in touch with you to ask you for one like particular that they want, and just I want to make, if you want something out of anyone in this industry, especially if you're not sending it to them, something to them with a fee, you have to make what you're asking of them as easy as possible. So I just spent a couple of days working on a shit hot press release, basically. Sent it out with a nice, polite, hopeful message, and very gratified. Brave Words and Louder in particular stuck out to me, though there's been a good few others as well. Also, the Louder one may also just have been blind luck in that shortly before that, Ritual, who was the other band that Diana had featured with recently, they had done, I think, the same thing, and they were in it. So there had already been something with Diana, but yeah. Luck. I've no PR on this really. It's just been kind of, I'm fortunate in that, the other artists who are involved are incredible at what they do, and people already know that. So it's just kind of bled out.
Yes, you kind of latched on to their notoriety to get in there, which is smart. I'm not dissing you or anything by saying that, but I'm just pointing out. So you kind of went and you took, because they'd already featured her.
Yeah, so with Louder specifically, Deanna was already, I would have written to them anyway, but I think the fact that she was already recently on their radar with another feature, I imagine that it helped. I don't know, I wasn't there. But, yeah.
Guarantee you it helped for sure, 100%. Okay, so just out of curiosity, on the press release, did you kind of feature her as being like the main draw, or did you kind of like, did you highlight that in the subject line, or if you're willing to say?
Do you know, I honestly can't remember. It was because I sent out. I think the subject line was just the name of the song, and then Archie Caine featuring the Anna Verkeersbrecher. So
Cool.
but
So
yeah, like, obviously she was in the press release because obviously she's in the song, but nothing more, I think, than that.
Cool. And then also for the promotion of it, so you got Brave Words, you got Louder. I think you got a few others. I can't remember off the top of my head. So with Brave Words, it was kind of like a similar thing. You just sent them the press release and you said, I got her on here, blah, blah, blah type of a thing.
Yeah, and they were really cool as well. So I've just sent, the press release, basically the single's coming out, but it's from the full album, which also features Damien Wilson, has all the things, assets can be linked to here. If you want to listen to some other tracks sneakily, here's a private SoundCloud link. Here's, everything I can think of that you might need in a PDF.
Cool. And then another follow-up to that is, how many press releases do you think you sent out total to get those?
About 50.
50? Okay, you're doing pretty okay. You're getting pretty good results with, okay, that's not like super high, but it's not super low either, but it's pretty good. Okay, cool. And then how have you been kind of trying to get people to review the album, or are you not even going there?
I haven't really, to be honest. Someone wrote to me saying a professional contact of theirs had a press release and had thought they might be interested. So would I mind sending them some more music for them to review at some point if they were able to? But yeah, in general, it's just, that isn't something I thought about hugely on the basis of, I have reviews wise. Have enough to think about in terms of the people who are listening to it, if they like it or not. So anyone who wants to review it kind of for press purposes is just a bonus, really.
Fair enough. And what else do you have for plans for promoting the upcoming release?
More of the same, really. I shall send out another press release for the full album. But yeah, it's just I'm really fortunate in that there's some people now who are really kind of engaged in it with the single already and looking forward to hearing more. So yeah, nothing too dramatic, more of the same, and cross my fingers and everything, really.
And I got one more question on promotion, one more kind of like sales aspect thing. Are you pushing more your digital, or are you pushing for physical sales more? Because you showed the CD, so obviously you got.
I have CDs. Yeah. It's not a CD seller's market at the moment in general, but I wanted to have them anyway, and I figure if they don't immediately all disappear, then they're not going to go moldy. I have them for however long. It's tricky because on the one hand, I'd love it if absolutely everyone bought a CD for me, because that would be really useful for things like paying rent and mixing engineers. But equally, people streaming helps it get in front of other people who haven't heard it before, and it's the musician's curse in the dreaded S word Spotify's area. Mm-hmm. So I'm feeling, whichever I get, I feel intensely fortunate for. So there's different benefits to each.
What do you think of CDs, out of curiosity?
I like CDs. That's my kind of my teen self-discovery heyday that everyone has kind of in their adolescence, where they're really starting to figure out what their tastes are, who they are as a person, everything. That was in the CD era, where you would go down to HMV, in my case being a Brit, buy a CD and go home and listen to it. So yeah, I like a CD. I like an LP, but not as much as CDs, which is a dangerous statement in some parts of music consumption world today.
It is.
But I'm of the opinion that the reason that people report a much better sound quality with LPs is because people who listen to primarily to LPs are more likely to have a bigger and more expensive sound system. Yeah.
Confounding factors of research. That's a good thought.
Mm-hmm.
So, don't get me wrong, if there was enough market for it, I'd love to do an LP run for this as well. But at the moment, I am only certain of 2 people who would want to buy one, and that is not cost effective.
Nay, sir.
I think that's all I got on the promotion and sales end, Aaliyah. Do we have anything else we want to go over with them?
If you could maybe think of 3 things you've learned from, again, the promo or the production side of this that you would give out as advice. Top 3 things you learned that could translate as tips for other musicians. What would they be?
Oh, God. See, almost everything, because this is the first time I've done anything like this. So almost everything has been me learning the least efficient way to do anything. To be honest, I think the biggest and best piece of advice I would give is actually something I've learned from my childhood drama teacher at theatre school, Leslie Ann Albiston, who's in fact mentioned in the album, the liner notes, because it's such an important lesson for me. Is being afraid to do something isn't an excuse to you to not do it. Like, I could have done this 10, 15 years ago, but I was too involved with what if it didn't work out, what if I'm not good enough at it, and obviously things, now is when it is happening, so I'm not beating myself up about it not being now, because this is how things are working out, and who knows what it might have been like if it wasn't. But don't get in your own way too much. The worst that will happen is something that doesn't quite work out, and then you end up doing something else instead, or going in a different direction, or just something that you have something that's a bit of a mistake, and then you learn from that all the ways to not do things. But yeah, don't get in your own way, because that's what I've been doing for the last decade at least, and I'm only just starting to do things that I would want to do now.
Cool. We got anything else, Leah?
All right, well, please shout out your music. Where can people follow you? Where can people listen to your music?
Oh, everywhere. Everywhere you would listen to music, I think, Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music, or shortly there will be available for sale CDs, which would make me very happy, because so far the only person who hasn't made money out of this album being produced is me. So
that's how it goes.
Yeah, which is fine, but I like buying food and paying rent, so buy my CDs and my merch when it is available. All
right, everyone. Archie Caine. Look up the single Eden. The album Tommy and the Angels is coming out soon.
April the 22nd.
Thank you. And make sure to check out his music. And until next time, make like a bull and throw those horns up.